This is the Ted Wallachin Podcast. Brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And Halenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Halenda's, the way sausage should taste. And now, here's Ted.
My guest this week is a comedian, actor, writer, director, and creator of the multi-award-winning television series Hiccups and Corner Gas. In addition, the motion pictures No Clue and Corner Gas. In 2001, he was awarded Best Male Stand-Up at the Canadian Comedy Awards. In 2008, he received the prestigious Comedy Network Sir Peter Ustinov Award at the World Television Festival in Banff, an honor he shares with such notables as Bob Newhart, John Cleese, and John Candy. His first novel, a psychological thriller titled Huge, will be published in the fall of 2023. Please welcome the pride of Tisdale, Saskatchewan, Brent Butt.
I have kind of an odd body. I have a kind of an odd build. I'm all torso. I got a big torso, but I have very short legs, you know? I stand 5'9", but I sit about 6'5". There's no getting around it. I sit like a giant of a man. If people see me, oh God, sitting down, look at the size of that guy, and then I barely stand up. Yoink, barely any difference at all. It's a very weird body. It's like when God was making me that day, he was watching the Flintstones, and he was like, you know, that Barney Rubble's got kind of an interesting bod on him. I'm going to try that on this one. I'm going to give him the Barney body, but I'm going to give him the Fred head. We'll see how that.
Welcome to the pride of Tisdale, Saskatchewan, Brent Butt. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I like that handle. I like that moniker.
There you go. It's all yours. Tisdale, Saskatchewan. 3,000 people, something like that?
Somewhere around there. Like when I was there, it might be bigger now. It might be 3,800. It may have ballooned to 3,800. I don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I grew up there, it was about 3,000 people.
Yeah, and a fairly significant chunk of that population was your family. You were one of 7 children. Is that right?
I am. Yeah, one of 7 children, a lot of cousins, and yeah, it was one of the things I always get asked when people say, growing up, did you get teased because your last name was Butt? And it was like, it was Smith in my hometown. There was nothing unusual about the name Butt in my hometown. There were a lot of us.
Yeah. And now you fell in love with comedy at a fairly young age. I think you were like 10, 12 years of age, something like that. After seeing a stand-up comic. Was it Kelly Monteith that you saw on television?
Yeah. Kelly Monteith. He was the first person I'd ever seen doing stand-up. I'd never even knew that stand-up was a thing. I was always a fan of comedy. Like, you know, laughter, you know, drew me in. And my family was all very funny. And that's one of the, you know, we didn't grow up with a lot of money, so you entertain yourselves. And my brothers and sisters and both my parents could make me laugh. And I just loved comedy. And so I was drawn to, you know, sitcoms and sketch comedy. But I'd never seen somebody just walk out and talk and be funny. I'd never seen a stand-up comedian until the old Alan Hamill show that came out of Vancouver in the afternoons. It was like a you know, daytime talk show. Alan Hamill show later became the Alan Thicke show. And they had stand-up comedians on there. And the first one I ever saw was Kelly Monteith. And it just absolutely took over every fiber of my imagination from that point on. It's the only thing, from that point on, it's the only thing that made sense to me to try and do. You know, it's like, well, why isn't everybody doing that? That looks like the coolest thing.
Yeah, exactly. It beats working as a lumberjack, for example.
Yeah. But it just touched me in a specific way that nothing else had.
But you also had this passion for comic books, and you were an illustrator yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the only other thing that I thought I might pursue because I could draw, and I enjoyed drawing, but I always found that anytime I had to draw, like for, you know, an assignment or for work, it kind of took the love of it away. And I still draw quite often. You know, I do a little drawing on my iPad using the Procreate app, and I'll load it up to the internet and let people see it, that kind of thing. But doing it for fun is one thing. And then I learned, especially when my buddy and I started a publishing company to do a comic book, the amount of drawing that has to be done. I was like, oh, I don't like it that much.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something I want to do 8 hours a day.
Right.
But comedy was, well, first of all, the notion to me was that comedy is not something you have to do 8 hours a day. It seemed like a very attractive. I was inherently a fairly lazy kid, I think.
Okay.
But it was like, this looks like it's all fun, and it doesn't seem like an 8-hour job. You don't know when you're young, you don't know what all goes into it. You learn that later on. But I was just, for me, stand-up was never work. Even when it was hard, even when you're, playing biker bars and having your life threatened, it never felt like work. Sometimes it felt like danger, but it never felt like work.
Yeah. So, if you're a kid and you're 12 years old and you're living in Toronto and you have aspirations to become a stand-up comedian, there are all kinds of venues that are available for you as you get older, as you progress through your craft. Not that many opportunities, that many openings, other than maybe the Legion Hall in Tisdale where you can stand on a stage. Where did you go from there? Saskatoon, was it?
Yeah, well, the first time I did stand up was in high school, like at a variety night,
Yeah.
And they had, you could if you wanted to do something for variety night, you could audition. And I remember saying to the people, there was like 3 students organizing and 1 teacher overseeing, and I said to them, I want to do stand up comedy, and it was like the weirdest thing you could have said to them. Like, what the hell? And they're like, okay, well, let's see what you do. So I auditioned my bit, like I wrote all original stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I did it in the afternoon for these 4 people in the school gym. I stood on stage, and they didn't really laugh, but at the end they were like, "Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, let's do it." And so I didn't know how it was going to go, and I was very kind of nervous, but excited, nervous. And when the time for the show came around, full gym, full of people, and I went out, and it was. There was never a more life-affirming moment for anybody, I'm sure, in their life. It went great, big laughs, and I was just like, this is it. There's no stopping me now. And I did it the next year. And the fact that it went well at high school encouraged me enough that I thought this is going to be my path. I had applied to and got accepted to Sheridan College in Oakville for an animation program. That was going to be my kind of plan B if this showbiz pipe dream falls through. But I think I was there 4 days. I quit very early at the animation thing. I quit when I knew I could get my mother's tuition money back because I just knew if I don't pursue stand-up, I'm going to be miserable. I need to pursue it and see whether it can happen or not. Yeah, I may fall on my face. And then, I was thinking I could try stand-up for a couple of years. If it doesn't pan out, I can go back and study animation.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things where people say, your parents will always tell you when you're growing up, find a career that's reliable, something that will be with you for the rest of your life. And you're thinking, okay, stand-up comedy, that's about one of the most unreliable careers you can choose.
Yeah.
Second only to animator for cartoons or comics.
Yeah. I remember reading in Mad Magazine one time, they were doing a parody of the Waltons in Mad Magazine. And John Boy wanted to be a writer. And remember the father saying, nothing more useless than a writer except maybe an artist. And I remember that cracking me up. But I feel that I was very, very fortunate because I grew up in a home where, like I said, we didn't have much money. My father was the sole breadwinner. Mom was the stay-at-home mom looking after this parcel of kids. And, I don't know what my dad made my whole life. I think the year I was born, he started working at the honey plant, running the boiler room. I don't know, he's making $112 a month or something, and you got 7 kids to raise. Yeah. And so we were always kind of broke, but always, or, almost always, very usually happy and having a good time. And my mom and dad seemed to me to be the two of the happiest people I'd ever seen in my life. And so I'm sure they worried about the bills behind the scenes, but they didn't foist it upon the kids. But they just, there were a lot of laughs in the house. We were having a good time. And so I think my parents never equated happiness and money. They never equated success with, financial stability. It seemed like, they were both kind of like, find something where that you love and do that. And, you get by, scrape together something. The notion of, you have to make a bunch of money was never something that was put upon me as a kid.
Brent Butt is my special guest this week. Your biggest break, would it have been initially Just for Laughs? Back in what was that, early 2000s or late 1900s?
Yeah, back in the 1900s. I believe
I know.
I think my first appearance was 1992 at Just for Laughs. And it was certainly the biggest thing in my career to that point.
Right.
But, nothing really came from it, really. I think the thing that kind of put me on the radar even more than that was there was a showcase for Saturday Night Live. They were doing auditions for Saturday Night Live, and they came to Toronto to one of the clubs, and there was a bunch of stand-ups. We were all auditioning. And I'm not really, I'm not a character guy. Like, if you look at my acting career, every character is exactly like me, I don't have a vast array of characters that I do.
Yeah.
So I just did stand-up, and the people from Broadway Video that were there, from Lauren Michaels' company doing the audition,
right.
It was Broadway Video, which was the show that produced Kids in the Hall, and some of the kids in the hall were there, and some of the the mucky mucks from that kind of production team, and it was, to me, that was when I first got noticed, when people started saying, you got to see this kid, he's a funny guy. Not for Saturday Night Live. They had no interest in me for that, understandably. But they were like, this is a funny guy. And I got to know the kids in the hall from that. And from that, I got kind of into a bit of TV production because they put me on some sketches and things like that. And it kind of, I feel like it put me on the path of legitimate show business, sort of.
Yeah, yeah. So 2001 at the Canadian Comedy Awards, you're bestowed the Best Male Stand-Up in Canada award. How meaningful was that at that point, and what did it mean down the road?
It still means a ton to me. Like it meant everything to me at the time, and it still means a lot to me because that award was voted on by your peers. The people who voted on that were comedians and club owners. So it means a lot to have your fellow stand-ups and people who book comedy go, yeah, this is the guy. And to be in with some amazing company, other people who won it. So it meant the world to me. It just kind of meant that like validation within the community,
Yeah. Sure. That makes sense. And
you
so
see, my wife sneaked by. She's brought our dog in.
Hi.
There's Nancy.
hello.
There. See, it said Brent and Nancy, and that was prophetic.
What?
She
Yes.
made an appearance.
Oh, sorry.
It says on the camera here, Brent and Nancy.
Oh, okay. Well, hello and goodbye.
And now she's on.
Nancy Robertson is your wife, who plays Wanda on Corner Gas. I did not know for years that the two of you were married. I did not know that.
Yeah,
I don't know why I didn't know that.
We weren't for years. We
of
met,
course.
We met doing the show. That was some people wonder if we came into the show as a couple, but I didn't really know. Like, I knew who Nancy was. Sorry, I don't know if you can hear, my dog is really working the water bowl behind me here. It's a warm day here in Vancouver. He's got a touch of the laryngeal paralysis, we've learned. And so he's got some kidney issues. He's an old timer. He's 13 and a half. He's doing pretty well, mind you. But anyway, so Nancy and I, we weren't a couple. We didn't, we knew who each other was. That was about it. And what happened was when we were doing Corner Gas, when we were auditioning, I was having a hard time finding the person to play Wanda. I had initially written the Wanda character to be a bit older. The idea was she had worked for my father for years and was now going to work for me. So she was sort of the bridge between the two of us.
Right.
Transitionally. So I'd written her to be, like in her 50s or something like that. And we were having a hard time. We saw lots of very talented actresses for it, but nobody that really kind of clicked and made me think it was perfect. And so our casting agent said, would you be willing to look younger? And I said, yeah, we could look younger. Doesn't have to be this age, I guess. And she said, because who I think could really be funny in this part is Nancy Robertson. And I said, yeah, she's really funny. I knew her from doing Vancouver theater, sports, improv. She's an improv wizard. She's fantastically funny at improv. And so I said, yeah, let's see if she'll read. She came in and read and just nailed it. She became everybody's first choice right away.
Yeah, good choice indeed.
Yeah.
On both fronts, by the way.
Yeah, and then ended up, falling for her.
Yeah. Now, when you were doing theater sports in Vancouver, was
I
Colin
wasn't.
Mockery?
She was.
Oh, she was. Was Colin Mockery part
I
of the
was
mix there?
I was no good at improv. I tried it a few
Yeah.
times. I legitimately stunk at
It's
improv.
tough.
It's just a different muscle, different set of skills.
Now, was Colin Mockery part of that whole little crowd at the time?
No, I don't think he was when she was around there. Ryan Stiles probably around the same time. He predated her a little bit by that, but no, she was a regular there for, I don't know, 4 years or something like that. She was a main stage player.
Where did the concept for Corner Gas come from? I mean, you're obviously from Saskatchewan, from
Yeah.
a small town, as was Corner Gas was based on a small town. So it was a kind of a natural feel for you then?
Yeah, it kind of was the culmination of two things. One was I had an idea for a movie, and I wanted to write this movie, and so I was writing a screenplay for this movie, and it was the type of story that could take place anywhere. It didn't matter where it took place. So I thought, well, why not small town Saskatchewan? Because you never see that,
Yeah.
And I made the main character work at the gas station. Anyway, as I was writing this script, the story kind of started to fall apart, and it was becoming difficult to put together, and I felt I was contriving things that shouldn't be there. It dawned on me that this idea for this story, I don't think is a movie. It's not big enough to be a movie. It's not, and I'm not a good enough writer to make it a movie. So I kind of bailed on it. But what I noticed was the individual scenes came really easy to me, and there was good jokes, and I knew these people. I felt like I knew this environment. I knew these people. I knew how they talked, and I could make jokes with these people. So that was sort of a realization I was having. At the same time, I had kind of thought to myself, I was ruminating, as people do. I was ruminating, and I thought, what would my life be like had I not pursued stand-up, And I thought, I'll probably just be hanging out, working at the gas station back home. And so that thought, along with this notion of I'd been writing these scenes with these characters, just kind of culminated. I thought I should make that a sitcom, but I didn't think anybody would ever do it. I just wrote it because often I have to write things. They're in my head, and I have to creatively purge things. If I have a tune, I got to grab my guitar and get it out. If I have a picture in my head, I got to draw it. If I have a story, I have to write it. And that's how you otherwise they just sit and stew in your head and you can't think of anything else. So I wrote it as a treatment for a sitcom, a little 4-page treatment, and shelved it, never did anything with it for probably over a year. And then what happened was David Story, who was a TV director that I knew a little bit, he directed a couple stand-up shows that I had been on. He approached me and said, listen, I was talking to CTV. I pitched them some ideas for shows, and they didn't like any of them, but they knew that I knew you, and they asked if you had any ideas for TV shows. So do you have any ideas for TV shows? And I said, well, I wrote this one about a gas station in Saskatchewan, but I can't imagine anybody would be interested in that. I told him about it over coffee. He told the network about it, and they said, that does sound interesting. And I flushed out the treatment a bit more, and then we went in and we had a meeting, and the network said, yeah, let's dive in on this, and went into development. So it just kind of came about because, it's kind of that classic thing where they say, be prepared for when your opportunities come. Like when that question was asked to me, do you have any TV show ideas? I didn't have to say no, but I could, give me a couple months. I'll kick around something, because the opportunity can pass, right? I was able to say, because I had done the work ahead of time on my own for free, just because I had to, I was able to say, yeah, I got this. Here's some paper. Yeah. And so it's about being prepared sort of for your opportunities when they come. And then, so it's a mix of being very lucky and being, I'm lucky in 1,000 regards, and, but also then being prepared.
Cornercast has this real likability to it. It's the characters are easily identifiable, even as bizarre as they can be in some of the things that they do at times. But there's something very believable and something very likable about them as well. And maybe it is that sort of that small town Mayberry kind of feel to it.
But I don't think it is, because what happened is, like, it certainly connects with people from small towns, but we've had people from Toronto and New York, Sweden. They say that they really connect with these people, and like for me, the guy from New York City who wrote us and said, this is exactly like my neighborhood. There's the cranky old guy who's angry at everything. Like, who doesn't know the cranky old guy that hates change and is mad at everybody and everything?
Yelling at clouds.
Who doesn't have the sarcastic coworker who can just roast you? Who doesn't have the dopey buddy that you're like, yeah, I've been pals with this idiot for 40 years. Why?
Yeah.
Why am I friends with this guy? Everybody knows a fish out of water, like Lacey. She's in an environment where she kind of doesn't belong and yet weirdly fits in. And so these characters, like the strong matriarch, the dopey authority figures who clearly don't know what they're doing, but for some reason they're in charge of law and order. Yeah. So they're very universal archetypes. And so it's one of the reasons I think that the show connected, was because people can relate to those characters. And then the actors that we hired to play these parts were so fantastic at the job. The job being, make these characters on the page seem like real people.
Yeah.
And, that's no mean feat to, the skill of, it's one of the things I really learned that Cornercast taught me, was because when we first started casting, I sort of had I had a lot of stand-ups in mind to play the parts, and none of them ended up getting the part. What happened was, the stronger the actor was, the more believable the character was. And then the more believable the character was, the more funny the incongruities and the stupid things they say are. So it was a lesson for me. It was really about the craft of acting. It was like, man, if you get good actors who can really make the people seem real, and same with the writing crew, writers who can write and craft stories that suck you in. It's it's such a team effort. It really, to go from being greasy nightclub comic where it's just you and your thoughts and your words, and you live or die based on your own ability, and then to get into this real team environment was super fun for me.
Well, one of the great things, and one of the reasons I think that of the great success of Cornercast, was the fact that, like Jack Benny, you may be the star of the show, but you're not afraid to step back and give everybody else the laughs. And
absolutely.
That's not true with a lot of stars of television programs, especially those who create it.
Yeah, maybe, but it was always important to me. Like, it became very evident right away at the first table read that this was an ensemble show, and everybody had such fantastic ability that it would be, it would be flat out moronic for me to, like, for whatever neuroses I may have, I don't have that one. Maybe part of it is being from a big family that, and everybody around the dinner table at any given moment, somebody was telling a story and getting laughs. It wasn't always you. Right. But you would get your window. And So I kind of grew up in that environment. Maybe that helped. But it was just, I think it's more pragmatic. It was just like, man alive. Like, my name is on the show, and if I let these people be awesome, I'm going to benefit somehow from this.
Yeah.
It was completely pragmatic. I remember Johnny Carson saying that. It doesn't matter how funny Bob Newhart is on my show. People go to work the next day and they go, "Did you see Carson last night?"
It's true. It's true. The success of Corner Gas is quite phenomenal. 60 countries. And I was thinking, and talking to my producer about this, that here you've got a television program that ran for 4 or 5 years, extremely successful. Then it comes back as a motion picture, and then it comes back years later as an animated television program for 4 more years. And I'm thinking, has any television show ever done that? I couldn't think of any, and with the exception of, I guess, maybe Star Trek.
Yes, somebody had pointed that out. They said that, they said, "How is Corner Gas and Star Trek? What do they have in common?" And that's what it was. It was a TV show that also did a movie and also did an animated series. And I think in different order, Spider-Man maybe did that, but yeah, it's very rare. So we did 6 seasons of the live action, 107 episodes, and then I just thought it was time to pull the plug. But the idea was always, wouldn't it be great if we could come back 4 or 5 years from now and do a movie? And we did. And I always thought that was going to be the cherry on top. That was going to be the thing. And that's why we ended the movie the way we did. I sort of had this notion, here's a spoiler for anybody who hasn't seen the movie and plans to. I'll give you a moment to turn it down because I'm going to give it away. The idea at the end of the movie, and it was kind of, when we started writing the movie, I had 2 thoughts in mind. And one of them was, here's how I want the movie to end. We see at the end, Lacey and Brent are together as a couple, and it rocks everybody else. They're like, "What the hell, you guys? Have you?" And they're like, "How could you not know this? We've been together for 2 years. We do everything together." Because I wanted to play against the notion of, in a small town, everybody knows everybody's business.
Yeah.
I wanted to just play this thing where here's these 2 people who are blatantly dating in front of everybody else. Just the fact that they're not making out in public. Nobody knew that they were a couple. So that was how I wanted to end the movie. So we did, and we thought that's there, the end of it all, the cherry on top. Wasn't that a great ride? But then what happened was everybody in the country went and saw the movie. It was it was like the most watched thing that year. It was physically selling out theaters. I remember my brother calling from Calgary saying, "I can't get into your stupid movie. Sold out." And so Cineplex asked the network if they could have another weekend with it. It was just doing huge business. And then when it aired on TV, it was the most watched TV show of the season, and so that made the network call up and say, "Listen, there's clearly still an appetite for these people in this small town. You want to do more episodes." But I and my partners, we just didn't think it was the thing to do. Go back and do more of the same But you like to have a job. I enjoy having a gig and getting to check. So we thought, well, what could we do that would be the same but different? And because I had this, brief, albeit brief, history of animation, I have an interest in animating and illustrating and cartooning. It was an easy leap to make, to say, well, what if we did an animated version? And then you don't know if that's going to work. I didn't want to just do it listen, I'm all for a cash grab, but I thought that's the wrong reason to do anything.
Yeah.
And so if I felt like Corner Gas was too important to me, and it was important to a lot of people in the country, that I wasn't going to do this animated thing if it didn't feel right. And so how do you know if it's going to feel right? Well, we said, let's make a 3-minute demo and just see how it feels. If it doesn't feel right, we'll shelve it and walk away. If it feels good, we'll dive in. And we did this 3-minute demo, and it just felt right. It just felt like more Corner Gas. And so off we went.
This kills me. Sasquatch stole my phone. What's Bigfoot going to do with a phone? Go on Tinder?
Can't go on Tinder. His profile picture would be too blurry.
How can anyone be stupid enough to believe in Sasquatch? I mean, what kind of bonehead would, oh yeah, right, I forgot you believe.
Well, I wouldn't say I believe. I'm just open-minded to the possibility of a huge, hairy, primordial primate strolling through the countryside undetected.
I'm sorry, but I won't be getting on board until there's some proof.
Oh, sure, but you believe in gravity.
Pardon?
Gravity. You've never seen it. You can't hear it. You can't feel it.
If I pushed you off a roof, you'd feel it.
You can't smell it. At least you can smell a Sasquatch. It's like a diuretic skunk, according to eyewitnesses and nose witnesses.
How about unicorns? I hear they smell like lavender and fresh muffins. You believe in them too? You're thinking about which one would win in a fight, aren't you?
It's too close to call.
You think there's not a lot going on? Look closer, baby, you're so wrong.
More of the Ted Wallison podcast after this.
Hey, it's Ted Wallison for Tom's Place. You know, our fall merchandise is starting to arrive, but we still have massive amounts of summer clothing that needs to be cleared. Blowout sale prices on virtually everything, like Cohen suits, regularly $650, now $399 each, or 3 for $1,000. Plus, beautiful sports jackets and designer dress pants, 50% off. Check out our deals throughout the store with huge savings off our already below retail prices. If you need a suit for an upcoming special event, we are Toronto's one-stop suit shop. For the finest outfit for every occasion, there is no better time to find the perfect addition to your wardrobe. Everything is on sale to make way for our fall merchandise. Tom's Place is open weekdays from 11 to 6, 10 to 5 Saturday, 12 to 5 Sunday. Visit Tom's Place, 190 Baldwin in Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. Have you been tasked with the role of a state executor, or expected maybe in the future you will be? Well, if so, let me make your life a lot simpler by introducing you to my friend Debbie Stanley. Debbie is the founder of ETP Canada. They specialize in estate administration. Their goal simply is to help Canadian executors understand their role and how to deal with the loved one's estate. Let's face it, there's no school for this, but ETP Canada offers services such as executor support, estate accounting, and they have a new online course called Executor Ready. It's an engaging video designed to make estate administration easier and affordable. And those are two comforting thoughts during a stressful time. So call Debbie Stanley at 1-866-309-0387. That's 1-866-309-0387. Or you can get her at info@etpcanada.ca. That's info@etpcanada.ca.
Now back to Ted Wallison.
With the exception of Janet Wright, who passed, you brought back the entire cast. Was it difficult to convince them to recreate their roles? Were they concerned that maybe they may be stereotyping themselves?
It took one phone call to each of them.
Wow.
They were like, yes, let's do this. I think they missed playing these characters to some degree. But also the notion of animation was, we don't have to relocate to Saskatchewan for 6 months of the year. Well, I had to do 6, they do 3. But, it's a doing that series physically sort of kneecaps your ability to go off and do other things, because it's a big part of your year, and you're not in Toronto or Vancouver where the auditions are happening. You're in Regina, and there's not a lot of auditioning going on there. So it's, so I think they all looked at it like, well, this would be a fun way for us to keep doing this. But for the actors, it was really, they would come in for a half a day every couple weeks kind of thing,
Yeah. Is it more difficult, or is it easier? Is it the same acting on screen in front of a camera or in front of a microphone in an animated series?
It's kind of different because you have the script in front of you. You're not physically occupying the set the same way. So you're a little bit, you're more distant from the reality that you're trying to create.
Right.
So I think in some ways it's more challenging. In other ways, it's, you don't have to memorize your lines. You got them right in front of you. So it's I'll just say it's different. There is some difference to it. But once we started, the more we did it, the more we kind of got into it. And the more you could see, the actors would start to physically get into playing the parts, even though they were just standing in a studio reading into a microphone.
Right. What about financially in terms of putting a production like that on? What are the differences in cost between producing a sitcom and an animated series? Because animation is very expensive.
Yeah, I would say it's comparable. It's the same type of thing where gains that you make in one arena, you lose in the other arena, and so it's almost. We found it was almost a push. It was almost per episode. The cost was very similar.
Let's talk about Hiccups in the inception of Hiccups. How that all came to be.
Yeah, that was just we had a big hit with Corner Gas, so the network was keen to hear my next idea. And, I had this idea about a children's author, a very successful children's author who was sort of very emotionally a child herself. It was like a grown woman who was, emotionally a 4-year-old. And it was one of the reasons for her great success was because she could write these books. She connected with kids on that level. But it made her very wealthy and successful, but it makes day-to-day living a challenge. And she had all these emotional hiccups. So that was the idea for that. And, just Nancy was the natural person to play Millie, this children's author with emotional hiccups, because she, really has the ability to just shift gears so fast, to go from being super happy to rage to tears, what the Millie would do. That's a tall order for an actor, and a lot of fun for an actor too. She really enjoyed playing Millie because you get to do so many different things. And then, the idea was that I wasn't going to play the part of Stan Durko. I just wanted to write and produce and direct episodes and be the showrunner of the thing and not be on camera. And I had another guy in mind for the part of Stan Durko, the life coach. So it's kind of like the premise, for those who don't know it, it's this very successful author with the emotional hiccups who on a whim hires this life coach because psychiatry and psychology and therapy has not helped her. And she's never heard of a life coach. When she hears about a life coach, this is the thing for me. She hires this guy, but he's just getting into the business and has no real training or ability. He's not very good at it. But he's a good heart. He's a good soul. He's a good, nice man and wants to help people. And so he gets the gig helping this person who needs a lot of help. And he doesn't have the skill set, but he has the drive and the heart to try and help her, but not the ability. But somehow they complement each other's shortcomings, and they work together quite well. So that was kind of the premise of it. But the network basically said, for this to go ahead, you got to be in the role of the life coach.
Yeah. Brent Butt is my guest here. You're embarking on a tour coming up later on this month on the 27th of September. I think it kicks off in Peterborough, your stand-up. Did you ever, when you were doing Corner Gas, the television program, eats up an awful lot of time, obviously took a lot of time away from you in terms of touring. Did you ever decide or think that maybe you would put stand-up aside completely and just focus in on acting and film and television work?
No,
or was it always something that was going to be there?
Yeah, if I was ever going to shelf something, it would be TV and film. I don't think I could shelf stand-up. I don't think. I mean, by the time we were done filming a season, I was so itchy to get out and do stand-up again because it had been everything in my life for, by the time Corner Gas came around, I'd done nothing but stand-up for about 15 years, pretty much nothing. A bit of TV production here and there, but it was all stand-up for me. And it's my love. For me, that's where I'm the most me. You know what I mean? Like I feel like the thing that I'm doing that most hits home to your true center is me being on stage with a microphone trying to be funny. But it's awesome. It's good to be here. Had a bit of a weird day today. Went to meet a friend at a restaurant. Friend said to me, come meet us for a restaurant. I made a reservation. It's under my name. So I go to the restaurant. I walk in. I go up to the little hostess stand, and I say, I'm supposed to meet somebody here, the reservation under Hodgson. The hostess goes, Watson? I say, no, it's a Hodgson. She looks down at her little book, and she goes, Lawson? I say, no, it's Hodgson, Elizabeth Hodgson. She goes, Billings? I go, what the hell are we doing? I don't know what's happening now. How long does this usually go on? Because I don't know what game we're playing here. This isn't how this is supposed to work, you know? Like, if that's how this worked, I wouldn't have to say anything, right? I would just walk up in front of your stand, and you'd look up at me and go, Walensky? And I'd go, sure. And you'd take me to a table full of strangers, and we'd sit and eat in awkward silence. What's your name? I don't even know anymore.
You were a big fan, as was I, of Dick Van Dyke when you were growing up.
Yeah.
Did you
I
ever
still
meet
think
him?
it might be the most perfect sitcom.
Yeah.
All around, like everything about it, you know, the writing, the cast, the premise, the execution, it was just so good, and it holds up. Like how many sitcoms or even movies hold up from the early 60s? That was such, you know, it was a weird window of time, you know, from the early 60s to the late 60s. That decade was tumultuous. I mean, it changed. If you look at something in 1961 and something in 1969, it looks like two different planets.
Yeah, exactly.
So for something to come along in the early 60s and play as well as it does in the year 2022, I had to think legitimately for a second what year it was.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
You know, it's a testament. You know, there are a few movies and TV shows that can do that, and those are the high water marks.
Did you ever meet Dick Van Dyke?
No, never have. Or Maury Amsterdam, you know. Oh, I mean, I've never met anybody from that show, but I've been fortunate. I've gotten to meet a lot of my comedic heroes. I met Bob Newhart, and I met Steve Martin, and Eugene Levy, and John Candy, and you know, I've met a lot of the people, Bill Murray, you know, people that I grew up loving and admiring. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of them.
You had a lot of guest stars on Corner Gas, people who would just sort of pop by for no reason.
Yeah.
And politicians as well. Adrian Clarkson was on an episode recently I watched.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very bizarre.
Yeah, it was very bizarre.
Did they approach you or did you approach them? Because I remember talking with Yannick Bisson one time about Murdoch Mysteries, and he told me that it was Stephen Harper that approached their show about an idea for a plot, and they invited him on.
Yeah. Usually, it's funny you say that, because usually we approached people, but he was the one person who approached us. And I always thought it was because we had Paul Martin on, and so he thought, well, we've got to politically balance this. I got to get on that show. And then he did the Murdoch Mysteries. So it was like, oh, this is a thing he does. He's an aspiring actor.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the way it kind of came about was we had this idea for, I think our first cameo was Lloyd Robertson. That was the first idea. And it was a hard sell because we were an unknown show. We hadn't been on TV yet. And the idea of him coming on, and the scene was kind of goofy. It was Brent imagining that he was sitting beside Lloyd Robertson at the news desk eating chips while Lloyd was doing it, and Lloyd was getting mad at him for crunching chips. So I could see where somebody like Lloyd Robertson, his stature, might be looking at this going, what?
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a CTV show, and so I guess they were able to coax him. But it was fun, and it was just a natural thing to do. And within the framework of Corner Gas, we had created this scenario where we could pop out and see what somebody was imagining. Because in the writing rooms, often we would come up with good jokes, but they were sort of too far-fetched, and they would fracture our reality. I never wanted to do that. I always wanted this to seem like a real place. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to fracture that reality. But at the same time, we were coming up with good jokes. I didn't want to just not do those jokes. And so we sort of came up with this notion of, well, what if we just see Brent's imagination? At first it was just me, and then it became, we could do it with any character. What Brent's thinking and Brent's happy place. We would go, if there was time of trouble, Brent would recede to his happy place where angels were making him hot dogs. and he had a pudding
Yeah,
bath
yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And so we had this built-in framework where we could, anything that we could come up with that was funny, we could do and not fracture our reality because it's just into somebody's imagination. And so that allowed us to, feather in these cameos. But the way it usually came about was just as a product of writing. You'd be writing along and you'd come up with some joke and you'd be like, wouldn't it be funny if somebody was like, who's the person you'd least imagine tearing down a barn? Somebody of import and somebody, like the Queen. Well, we can't get the Queen. What if the Queen's representative? What if Adrian
Exactly.
Clarkson was trying to knock down a barn with a sledgehammer? That'd be funny. Well, let's see if she'll do it. So that's how they usually came about. And then sometimes they came about because an opportunity arose where, like when we had Paul Martin on, he was coming to Regina to do some things politically in his role as Prime Minister of the nation. So then we said, well, can we take advantage of him being here? And I wrote a little separate piece that could stand alone. So, our production machine could keep going if he said no and didn't want to do it. You never wanted to hinge an episode on somebody's appearance. You always wanted
Yeah.
So I wrote this thing where, the show started with, instead of Corner Gas starting, it started with the Prime Minister addressing Canada. He was giving an address to the nation. And as he did, I walked out beside him and was like, do you have to do this now? This is kind of like our 1/2 hour of the week, And so that was a funny thing. And then, so sometimes it would be opportunities would arise and you would try and take advantage. But 85% of the time, it was just organic. A joke came up in the writing room and you thought it was funny. And then you said, well, let's see if we can make that happen.
What I would imagine that even in their role of leader of the opposition or a leader of the nation, my guess is they're probably still pretty nervous on set.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Paul Martin. No, I don't think Paul Martin or Stephen Harper or later when we had Justin Trudeau in the animated, I don't think any of them were nervous, really. But they all showed like, so Stephen
Concern?
Harper, he impressed me with his just comedic timing and his read. He was very good in the role. And also the fact that he had, we had written the scene where he basically showed him flip-flopping. He was wishy-washy. He was like, he said he was for gophers and then he said he was for prairie dogs and everybody was like upset. And he was like, no, I mean gophers, they're better. So I thought he would probably, and we had a couple backup ideas because we thought, the politician in him probably won't want to appear being wishy-washy in the scene. But he was just like, no, that's funny. I'll do that. I'll flip-flop. That's funny. And he did a great, and Paul Martin wasn't nervous. Paul Martin was the thing that impressed me about Paul Martin was he was genuinely curious about everything. He was in a new scenario, and his way of dealing with that scenario was, I want to immediately understand everything that's going on. What does that cable do? Who is that guy? What's his job? What are those lights for? Why are those lights there and there's lights there behind? He was immediately trying to assess and understand the situation. I was like, no wonder this guy's like a corporate magnate, a business tycoon, because it's like he just wants to. He was in an environment he didn't understand and just went about the business of understanding it, asking questions. And I was very impressed by that. And then with Justin Trudeau in the animated, he just wanted two things. It was like, I got somewhere to be. This was got to be fast. And he just said to me, how do you want me to do it? Just give me a line read. I don't want to do this wrong. How would you do it if you were me? I'll just copy you. And so he was very efficient and was like, let's do this, do it right, and move on.
We had to go on vacation probably.
No, it was, I can't remember what was going on. It was, there was a lot going on at the time. I remember leading up to this, I was like, are we going to get pulled? Are we going to, but because the nice thing about animation is like, whereas Stephen Harper had to come to Regina with a whole security detail and God knows what was involved in that.
Yeah.
This was, we came to the Prime Minister's office with a microphone and a recording box. We were in and out. I think it took 25 minutes.
Cool. Talk to me about your future as a novelist. You've got a thriller that you've penned called Huge, which is set to be published in the fall of next year. Is that correct?
Yeah,
2023?
October of 2023 it's going to come out. For whatever reason, the publisher thought this would do well as a fall release. I don't know what goes all into those decisions, but they thought this should be a fall release, but it's too soon to come out this fall. We can't turn it around. So, yeah, I mean, it's just something I've always wanted to do, to see if I could do, was write a novel. I sort of have a list of things that I want to write. The writer in me has a list of things that I want to write. And, TV ticked off the box, comic book ticked off the box, motion pictures ticked off the box. And the two things that were left were novel and professionally staged play. Because I'd written plays in high school, but I don't count those. So it's professionally staged play. So I'd had this idea for a novel. And there was a publisher, not ultimately the publisher that I went with, but a publisher had approached me about doing a book. And I said, well, funnily enough, I'm in the middle of writing a book right now. And they said, oh, great, tell us about it. They were hoping it would be like a funny romp, Brent Butt's favorite hot dogs around Canada or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's a violent psychological thriller.
Well,
that's quite scary. And they're like, oh, that's interesting. Well, let us know when that's done. But, it's like I had this idea and I just had to write it. And so...
And it deals with 3 comics on the road, is that right?
Yeah, so the background of it is something that I know, which is stand-up. It takes place in the mid-'90s, 3 comedians on the road touring through sort of a remote stretch of rural Canadian countryside. There's a comedian from Chicago who's sort of on the back half of a mediocre career, a legitimately funny guy, but, things haven't panned out. He's lived hand to mouth, and he's in his 40s, and he's thinking about getting out of the business. And sort of a fast-rising young comedy star from Ireland. She's got a LA manager, and she's poised to potentially be hosting a new TV show. So it's the two of these people, both very good at what they do, but on different ends of the career, and one about to quit and one about to rocket to stardom. And they each have a reason for saying yes to taking this run of shows through a remote stretch of rural countryside, playing smaller communities. And their opening act is a local guy from Winnipeg. And as they head out on the road with this guy, they start to get the feeling like he's maybe not wired up right. There's something, there's an air of menace about this guy. It's, starts off with him just being kind of overly keen and kind of annoying, and he's not that funny. But it progresses to where it's like, is this guy actually dangerous? And we soon learn to what things this guy is capable of, how dark this guy can be. And it's a scary book. And it sort of springs from the notion of when you're first starting out in stand-up. Like when I go on the road now, I can decide who I work with. I can pick my opening act, So I go on the road with people I like, people I think are funny, and they're fun to be around. But when you're first starting out, you just get, it's like you're going with this person. Somebody's in town from Fresno or from New Brunswick or whatever, you don't know this person. And sometimes you're on the road and it's, you're driving from one gig to the next gig late at night, and you're in the middle of the prairies, and it starts to become clear that, this person might be psychologically impaired, and there's a lot of places to hide my body.
Of all the people that you toured with over the years, that you were forced to tour with or be on the same stage or share a stage with, were there people that you may have taken little bits of different people and accumulated one person out of those little bits?
I mean,
was there any scary people you worked with?
Not specifically, but like more like there were several, and it's sort of a hodgepodge, I think, of, it's more about that feeling. It's more about the feeling of, and see, for me, what I really changed in this is, because there's a few people on the road, when you're on the road like that, and you're like, this could go sideways. But the notion was, what if this person was also enormous and clearly, powerful, muscular, able to fight at a level that I can't.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of vulnerability adds to the terror
Yeah.
of it all. And so, yeah, the character is one of the reasons the book is called Huge, is because the guy is physically huge. He's also, his stage name is, he's changed his name to be Huge, because it's his goal in show business is to be huge. And then the other element of it is they're driving across, especially the comic from Ireland, driving across, you know, Canada. It makes no sense. It's like she says, you know, the whole of my nation could fit between the towns in this country, because it's just so vast and open. And by the time they really get into trouble, there's nowhere to turn. There's nowhere to run. It's just them and him and the Canadian countryside.
Did you have to incorporate your comedic writing skills in the process of writing the novel? Like, are you quoting any lines that the comedians use while they perform? Or is it more
not very
observational?
much. Some, but not very much, because I knew that wouldn't read well. I knew that wouldn't make for a good read, to read the transcript of somebody doing stand-up.
Yeah.
So there's little bits and little moments just to show the comedian's particular ability. Like, for example, the comic from Ireland, she's really fast on her feet. That's her reputation, is like her wit is very, very fast. And Dale, the guy from Chicago, he's able to go into a bad situation and craft his way out of it. Structure, you know, he's a veteran, and he crafts and structures things. And so I had to show both of their skills sets. And so you get little windows of what they can do on stage. But I knew that wasn't going to be a big part of the book, because it just wouldn't read well. It wouldn't. That's not what a novel is or should be.
Have you thought about whether or not they could be turned into a motion picture? And if it was, who would you cast as those were in those roles?
Only one character that I mean, yes, I have thought of it as being like a movie or a limited TV run, and I think it would play well. I think it could be very cinematic and very intense. It's an intense book. It's an intense, scary book.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of.
Sounds like it.
I had a movie director who read an advanced copy of it and told me it was like Silence of the Lambs scary. So I took that as high praise. There's only one of the characters that I kind of have somebody in mind, but I wouldn't, you know, in a perfect world, actually, I wouldn't have anything to do with converting into a TV show or a movie. I would walk away and let people who are really skilled at turning a novel into a movie, let them do it, you know.
Right.
And just see how they do it. It goes back to that notion of, like, you know, working collaboratively. I'm always amazed when you see if you give creative people the room to do what they do well. I mean, you'll very rarely be disappointed.
Yeah.
If you have the right.
I'm
people.
looking forward to it. I'm not a scary kind of guy. Well, I guess maybe I am, but I'm not the kind of guy who likes to get scared. But that is the concept. The combination of comedians working in a frightening scenario fascinates me, and I quite look forward to reading that.
Well, good. Yeah, I'm happy to get you a copy early if you want. We'll see what we can do. But yeah, it's that it is a, you know, there's always, because when I first talked to publishers about this, they were like, well, you know, you wrote a scary book, but you're known for comedy. And, you know, my thought is they're not that dissimilar. They're not so distant cousins. Comedy and terror are two ways of processing a bad situation.
Well, if anybody knows anything about dying, it's stand-up comedians.
Yeah. I've been in some terrifying situations and had to find a way to make it funny.
I would imagine. I wish you all the best in your upcoming tour. I thank you so much for taking the time, and thanks for all the years of entertainment. And oh my God, I still see you. You're on television every day, every single day, either you or your cartoon version of you.
I'm the new Gilligan.
You're the new Gilligan, yeah. You're on actually just about an hour after Dick Van Dyke, by the way. So it's a good combination.
Nice. I'll take that.
Well, listen, thanks very much, and all the best to you, Brent. And hopefully we'll talk again. And I'd love to do something with you when the book comes out.
Well, just let me know. Like you told me you follow the bulletins, so you'll know. Like if anybody's interested in the book when it's coming out of the process or whatever, just if you go to my website brentbutt.com, sign up for the bulletins. You'll know every step of the way because people who are involved, people who are signed up for the bulletins, you're going to be the first ones to see the cover. You know, you're probably going to get to read a chapter early, those kind of things. So if you're interested, just go to my website and sign up for the bulletins.
And check out Brent's podcast as well called Butt Pod.
The Butt Pod. Yeah, I did 13 episodes and then couldn't continue with it because of TV production, but now I got a bit more time on my hands, so we're going to get back to doing the Butt Pod.
Good stuff. Brent Butt, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Nice talking with you.
The Ted Wallisham Podcast has been brought to you by Tom's Place. For the finest in men's clothing at unbeatable prices, it's Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Tom's Place will suit you. And Helenda's, the meat people. Enjoy their award-winning products at selected Metro, Sobeys, Fortino's, and Foodland locations. Helenda's, the way sausage should taste. The Ted Wallisham Podcast is produced by Joey Roselli. Technical production by Paul Gatt. Music by Bike Thieves. I'm Becky Coles. Submit your questions and comments to ted@twmedia.ca.